guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today I want to talk about when there's multiple signs that you should go in one direction, but you almost are like, is that really the direction I'm supposed to go? And so today I want to share with you, I've had 2 psychic readings. I guess you could call them psychic readings or spiritual readings in the last couple of months, and they're both pointing me to a certain direction. And it's so funny because they were very, very similar, and it's things that I already know, but it's almost like you don't want you're like, is this really right? Are you sure this is what you're talking about? So let's just I'll rewind to my first reading, and then maybe we'll get to my second one. So my first one was when I went to see Rachel Hollis, which I'll do another episode on the Rachel Hollis convention that I went to. So stay tuned for that on my thoughts and my feedback on her event. But anyways, so there's one, we were there for, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we had a couple of girls' days planned because we didn't go to the full convention when we were in Minneapolis, because they sold out in like 20 minutes. Like, it was insane. So we just went to the health and wellness day. So that Friday we had some free time, and I shouldn't say kind of a hippie. I'm a hippie at heart. Like, I love energy healing. I love crystals. I love essential oils. I love all things holistic, out of the box, super hippie. Like, that's just me. Like, I sage my house. I have crystals for certain things. I have oils for certain things. I have certain mantras and things that I do. And one of the things that I wanted to do while I was in Minnesota was hit up a metaphysical shop. And what I mean by metaphysical shop is like a spiritual hippie woo-woo crystal shop. Okay. We don't really have them where I live, at least not that I have found. There was a few, but I believe they closed down. So anytime I go somewhere that's a little bit bigger city, I'm like, yep, got to hit up a crystal shop, got to hit up a hippie shop, get me some crystals, get me some cards, and just have a gay old time. So that was my only really fun thing that I had planned. I'm like, you guys, I don't give a shit what we do as long as we hit up a crystal shop. And so we had found, 3 or 4 that were pretty close to where we were staying at the Airbnb that we were staying at, which if you have not used Airbnb, I highly, highly suggest staying in an Airbnb. It was a phenomenal experience compared to staying in a hotel. This is the 3rd time that I've stayed in an Airbnb now, and I love them so much more than a hotel. Like, you get your own place, you get your own stuff. It's way cooler. So if you haven't done Airbnb, hit me up. I'll actually put a link in the show notes where you guys can click. I think you get some free bucks if you click it and use it. But yeah, next time you stay somewhere, use an Airbnb. Anyways, back to the story. So we hit up this one crystal shop, and before we even went to the different crystal shops, one of my friends that was there was like, hey, let's do some muscle testing. And basically muscle testing, in a nutshell, I'll keep it very simple. There's like a universal law on yes or no questions. We'll just say that. And so if you muscle test something, it's either ultimately true or it's ultimately not true. And so like you ask questions. And so basically we just muscle tested the integrity of the crystal shops that are around us. If you're familiar with muscle testing, send me an email, send me a DM. I'd love to hear your muscle testing stories. If you're not familiar with muscle testing, hit up the Google machine. There's tons of cool shit on there and YouTube and everywhere else. And then you can also hit up Jordan Wavra over at jordan.wavra on Instagram. She'll tell you all about muscle testing too. Anyway, so we muscle tested the integrity of the crystal shops. And so there was this one boutique that stood out. And so that's the one that we went to. And it's so funny because at the time, I had no intention of doing a psychic reading. One of the other gals was like, hey, it'd be cool if we saw a psychic, right? Had no idea that we would even see a psychic that day. But we head over to the crystal shop and we go in, and I shit you not, they were doing psychic readings that day only. Like that was the day that the psychic reader was there. And it was just hilarious because I'm like, well, obviously this is where we were supposed to be, so it's just like the universe, laying the breadcrumbs for us. Like, hey, go to this shop. You guys want to do crystals and energy healing and psychic reading? Well, all of those things are here. And again, like this shop didn't advertise that they were doing they didn't advertise that they were doing psychic readings, but as soon as we walked in, there was a thing on the board that said psychic readings today. And I was like, well, duh, we have to do these. So I can't remember who went first. I think I went second or third. I think I went third, actually. No, maybe I went second. I think I went second. Doesn't matter. Anyways, so I am just like totally eating up this whole store. Like they just have crystals galore. They have cards. They have, literally anything that you can imagine in a metaphysical store. And it's just a little shop, but the people were super nice. The vibes were really cool. And I got tons of cool stuff, but I kind of wanted to wait till after I had my reading before I bought any crystals. Cause a lot of times in your readings or in like spiritual readings or energy healer readings, they will focus on a certain area that you're struggling with and recommend certain things to help you heal that area. So whether it's depending on, what chakra it is, there's corresponding stones and oils that will go along with that chakra or that energy source to help you kind of ground that and heal that energy body. Okay. So I was kind of holding off until after my psychic reading before I ordered, or I shouldn't say ordered anything, before I picked anything out. Okay. And so then I go in there and I think I only did a 15 or 30 minute reading. I don't remember. It was very, very brief and, or quick, I guess, but it was so interesting. Cause like, as soon as you go in there and I don't want to say like I'm a skeptic, but I didn't want to like give up too much information. And so it was just really, really interesting, all of the things that she was saying to me. And so like I sit down, and I turn off my phone and we're like talking and she's like she's like channeling in whatever is talking to her. And so I can kind of tell that she's like reading some things because she's not looking directly at me, but she's like sensing things. Right. And so a few of the women that I went with were also clients of mine. So this was not like a client trip. It just happened that we all ended up going together. There was two that used to be clients. It doesn't matter. Anyways, they were previous clients of mine, current clients of mine. And so one of the very first things that she said to me was, you're the leader of this group. And I just kind of chuckled because I was like, well, no, we're here on a girls trip. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I can kind of get where you pick up that vibe. Because in some sense, I had been leading these women through a transformation journey, a spiritual journey, a life-changing journey, right? While we weren't necessarily doing that weekend, that was a role that I had played in their life, either currently or at some point in time. So I was like, okay, I feel ya. And so then she just kept going on and was like, you are experiencing, some difficulty in a few different relationships. She's, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. And this may sound all like hippie woo-woo gibberish to you guys. And I don't want to like spill all the beans because there's still some things that I'm working through, right? You share the story after the wound has healed. You never share the story as you're healing or when the wound is open because you are at your most vulnerable. And a lot of times you are unable to really share the full experience of your healing transformation when you're in the thick of it. And so once the scar is there, once the wound has healed, then by all means, I'll share more information. And this goes to anybody, like it can be really hard to open up and be vulnerable. And if you're going through a hard time right now, just know that like, it's okay. Like you will get through it, but remember to stay strong and don't share too much information and be cautious on who you're vulnerable with. There's only certain people who can open up and create that space for you to be vulnerable without judgment. Okay. There's not a million spaces out there. Not everybody has the ability to help you heal. And when you open up to the wrong people, it can take your vulnerability to a whole nother level where you start to like shut it down and close up and not focus on your healing for fear of judgment, for fear of failure, for fear of putting yourself out there. So just be cautious. That's all I'm going to say on who you share your most vulnerable self with. And make sure that, your wound is at least on the healing side, if not completely healed, before you share your experience with others, because sometimes it can just start to downward spiral. Okay. So a lot of the stories and things that I share with you guys, why, yes, they may reopen wounds, or I still feel certain things regarding them. I'm sharing experiences that I have learned with you, or experiences that I'm, working through, not necessarily like in the thick of it. Like I would never come on here and be like, oh my God, I just had a horrible conversation with my husband and my world's falling apart and blah, 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 blah. Like that's not okay. Like that is not okay. But if I have a horrible experience and I learn something from it, then by all means, I'm going to share the experience and my learning afterwards. So I hope that makes sense to you. But anyways, back to the spiritual reading. She was talking about how I'm having some conflict. And I'm like, well, yeah, everybody has conflict, right? But she started talking about relationship and work conflict. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And again, like I know a lot of people have that, but it was just very interesting, the exact details that she was giving me. And so I have been crossed with a couple of paths this last few months. Couple will take me in very, very different directions. And so it's like, well, what do you do? Which direction do you go? If I go this way, this is what's going to happen. If I go this way, this is what's going to happen. And not that either way is bad, but you always want to make the right decision. And you're like, where's my life going to be in 5 years if I take this road? Or where's my life going to be in 5 years if I take that road? And am I going to have to jump through a lot of hoops on this side? Or will I have to do more jumping on this side? Like, which is going to help me be my most authentic self? Which is going to help me make the biggest impact in not only my life, my family's life, my community's life. And so I've just been faced with a lot of challenges lately, and it's taken me a lot of inner work to kind of figure out what those next steps are. And you may be in a very similar boat. I don't know. But sometimes we have to just like quiet the mind. And so one of the things she told me to do, and I recommend this for a lot of people, is get grounded. And I like to think that I'm a pretty grounded person. I love nature. I love water. I love being outside like every day. Now that it's nice out, I'm like soaking up the sun. I'm sitting outside doing my meditations and my journaling. Like everything is outside. I'm like barefoot. I'm swimming in the water. And so that was one of the things that she recommended, was, becoming more grounded and surrounding myself with more grounding stones, grounding oils, things like that. Another thing she told me to check out was heart math. And this is where you're like putting the power of words, setting the intention into like a water or something. So like say you go to bed at night, you put your water on your stand. If you write a word on a piece of paper and put it underneath your water bottle, you will like create and set that intention within the water. So let's say that your word is confidence. Like I want to wake up today and feel confident. You would write the word down. You would write the word confidence down and then place it under your water. And then each time you took a drink, you would embody that confidence. So she told me to really look into heart math, and that would really help me. Another thing that I have been faced with lately is I really want to travel. Like I want to travel to like big places. Like I want to go to the Caribbean. I want to go to South America. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Australia. I want to go to all of these like big places. I'm not just talking like state parks and things like that, because I travel around the US quite a bit, but I want to travel abroad quite a bit more. I've only been out of the country 2 or 3 times. And I've been to Hawaii a handful of times. And I know that's not technically out of the country, but it is, across the big ocean. And so it seems like it's out of the country. And one of the places that has been on my bucket list forever, you guys, is Australia. And so that was the thing that she said to me. She's like, you need to travel to Australia. And it's just so funny. Like out of all the places to travel, it's in my top 3. And that's where she told me that I needed to go first. So I just find it so interesting that like Australia is on my bucket list in the next couple of years. And that's the place that she tells me I need to go. And she's like, you need to travel. You need to explore. Like that is what sets your soul on fire. That's what helps you help others. By all means, you need to do these things. And if you guys have been following me for a while, like I am obsessed with vacations. I'm obsessed with like HGTV and, you know, like the Bahamas life, Mediterranean life, Mexico life. Like I'm always trying to eat up all of these exotic areas on where you can travel. Like I watch the Travel Channel. I watch all of these things. I'm constantly doing research on like vacations, where my next retreat's going to be, where I'm going to travel next. And even like this year, like I'm still going to Montana. I'm still going to go to Vegas. I'm going to go to Texas. Like I've been to Texas. I'm going to go to Texas again. Minnesota, Nebraska. I mean, I travel all over the Midwest, but like there's a handful of other places. Basically every other month I've been traveling. Except for I won't do a whole lot of traveling in July. And then in August, I'm going to start up traveling again, even with an infant. I feel the calling, and so I'm going to make it work. But that was one of the things that she told me I need to do more of. And I'm like, I hear you. And it's so funny because my husband is not a traveler. Like he's a homebody, and I'm a homebody too. But I love adventure and I want to see new things. And I feel like there's so many places on this planet that are meant for me to see and feel and experience. And he may or may not, he wants to travel, but not to the extent of me. And so that's why I love like our relationship, because I can go travel and he's just like, yeah, go have fun. And I do the same with him. I'm like, yeah, you want to go hang out with the guys for 3 or 4 days and ride your bikes into wherever? I don't care. Go for it. You know, you want to go on a 2-day bender where you're golfing and drinking the whole time? Like, go for it. Like, we have a very good working relationship in that sense that like he is a capable adult. I am a capable adult. We love traveling together, but we also love traveling alone too. And so it was just so interesting because these things have been coming up in my journals almost daily. And then I go to this woman and she like repeats back to me what I've been saying. And I know these may seem very common for you guys, but like literally the things that she was saying to me was like she was repeating back what my word for word in my journal was. And so then we talked a little bit about the future. She goes, you know, you have lots of big ideas. You're a big thinker. She's like, you inspire and motivate a lot of people. She's like, I see you, you know, on stage talking to tons of people. She's like, and I've even seen you on stage recently. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting because just a couple months ago, I hosted one of my very first big conferences, and I've spoken on stage and stuff before, but you guys can probably hear my dog in the background. Her nails on the floor are just ridiculous. But so I thought that was awesome. And then she's like, you know, your next step is going to be a TED Talk. And you guys, a TED Talk, if you don't know what this is, look up TED Talks. They also have a podcast. They have a YouTube channel, all kinds of stuff. But it's just basically like big ideas, forward thinkers. And my dream has been to be on a TED Talk for like the last 2 years. Like ever since I figured out what a TED Talk was, I was like, I have to do a TED Talk. Like this has to happen. And so it's been on my dream board. It's been on my bucket list, and I've been journaling about it. And then she just straight up says like, have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk? Like, I see you doing a TED Talk. So I'm like, oh my God, like this is my next step. I'm going to do a TED Talk. So that's one of my goals for 2020, is to be on a TED Talk, go somewhere and do a TEDx talk or just a TED Talk. It's going to happen. It's gonna happen. And so then the other things that she said is that she sees me writing a book. And you guys know, last year I declared that one of my 2019-2020 goals was going to be to write and publish a book. And so that is in the works. But the way that she made it sound was that it's going to be more of a workbook. So like I don't know how this looks, but I'm like, you know, this is genius. I have thought about doing a workbook or some sort of journal. And, you know, I've been talking to some of my clients too. And they're like, you know, you would be great at doing like a journal with like prompts and like things to do. And so that is like, has my wheels turning. You know, it's been something that I thought about doing. Sorry guys, it cut me off. So anyways, I've had this idea of like a journal workbook for a while. And so I'm like, how do I do this? How do I put my teachings into a book? And so it's a workbook. So that's what I'm working on now. I have no idea how it looks yet. Just know that it is a work in progress. And it's just literally all the ideas that I have in my brain. It was like she was repeating back to me. It was just so crazy. And so then she says something along the lines of like, well, I see you in the top 100. And she's like, I'm not sure what the top 100 is, but I see you in the top 100. And so, I get goosebumps because that's been a thing of mine. I want to be the best of the best. And I'm sure you guys can relate. You want to be the greatest at something, whether it's the greatest knitter, the greatest mom, the greatest barrel racer, the greatest speaker, the greatest coach, the greatest chef, whatever it is that you are passionate about. And I'm multi-passionate, you guys. Like everything I do, I want to be the best at. Like when I'm in yoga class, I'm like, I have to be the best yoga person, which is so funny because like yoga is all about like checking your ego at the door. But like, even though I know I need to check my ego at the door, I still want to show up as my best. Right. And same thing like with horses or like with teaching or, when I teach my lessons or when I ride horses or when I compete in things, like even in like roller derby, like one of my goals was always to get MVP, and like I would beat myself up if I did not get MVP or at least some sort of award after each of the bouts. And I just always strive to be the best. And so I always want to be like in the top 10 or the top 20 or the top 100, just depending on what it was. Even going back to like when I was in the corporate world or when I was like in sales or any of these positions, I always sought out the awards. They're like, hey, if you sign up this many people or if you make this many contacts or if you make this goal, you win this award. And that recognition, I don't know why I know why actually, because like deep down, I was never like recognized as a child, right? It's like seeking that validation, but I still embody that, right? Like I just always want to show up as my best. I want to be the best and I want to be the top of, the top charts or whatever. And so it was just very interesting to have her repeat that back to me. Cause at first I was like, I don't care about that. But then I'm like, okay, yes, I do. Yes, I suppose you're right. I do want to be the best. And while I know as long as I give my best and show up as my best, that's all that matters. Deep down, I still want to have that validation and that recognition. Like, yep, Sasha, like you're killing it. Like, I love when people are just telling me like, hey, you're doing a really great job. And I know that probably sounds selfish and fucked up because I'm usually very humble about it because I'm like, or very modest. I'm like, oh, no big deal. It's not a big deal. But on the inside, I'm like, fucking right. I killed it. Celebrate yourself. I get pretty pumped up about it. But anyway, so that was my first psychic reading. And so like afterwards, I was just like, wow. It's like she took the thoughts from my head, from my journal, and spit them back at me. So it's like she was telling me things I already kind of knew, which may be the purpose of all psychic readings. I don't know. Sometimes they read your future. Sometimes they read your palms. Sometimes they do tarot cards. It just kind of depends on where you go and what results you're seeking. There's a million different I shouldn't say a million, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to have a psychic reading, and everybody is going to be uniquely different in the way that they read your energy and relay that information back to you, depending on whether they're channeling information from the divine, from cards, from whatever source it is that works for them. They're all going to be different. And so this lady was just speaking to me from a higher power. There was no cards. There was no like crystal ball. There wasn't anything like that. We were just like in a room sitting across from each other. And she was an older gal. She was probably in her 70s, which I just think is so cool because she actually is affiliated with a church. And so she is a woman of Christ, but she is also a woman of, the divine and this higher power in this universe and this psychic calling. And so it just shows that like you can be part of both worlds, and it doesn't have to be this black or white. Like there's so much gray area when it comes to you as a human and what your strengths and talents are and how you show up in this world. And so I just really, really appreciated that, she had such a, what's the word I'm looking for? like diverse background, I should say, because it wasn't like she was just like this hippie woman who came in with like this dark room and this robe and like a crystal ball with like, sage sticks and everything. Like she was just like a normal woman in like a button-up blouse that, came in and gave me a reading. It was just super, super cool. And it just shows that like, even though people think like hippie woo-woo stuff is like scary and sketchy and demonic or whatever, that is like total bullshit. And it's all about whatever intention you go in with and whatever the intention of the reader has and what the higher power has for you to hear and understand. And that you can have a religious side and a spiritual side, and they can be totally separate, but they can also be embodied within the same person. And it's such a unique experience. And I think that everybody should at least go have a reading done, and only do it if it feels good though. Like this is where the intention and where your intuition comes into play, because I don't suggest anybody go do a reading if you're scared or fearful or have like bad vibes. Like only do a reading if you feel called to it. So like if you go somewhere and you see something about a psychic reading and you get like the heebie-jeebies, listen to that. Don't go in there. But if you go to somewhere and they're doing like tarot cards or destiny cards or some sort of like spiritual or whatever energy healing, and you're like, wow, that sounds amazing. I really want to do that. That sounds so great. And you get like excited. Listen to that. Go for it. Even if it seems totally whack, totally out of the box, if you get a good feeling about it, just go for it. Okay. So this is where your intuition and listening to that inner guide really comes into play. Because if I would have had a heebie-jeebie gross feeling about this psychic reading, I would have never done it. I've turned down many psychic readings because I felt creeped out by the people, and I'm like, I don't want you tapping into any higher power around me. Like you seem like you're batshit crazy. But when I have like a connection with that person and I'm like, oh man, like I'm getting really good vibes from you. Like I feel comfortable around you. I'm going to listen to this. This is obviously you're having psychic readings here today, the one day that we're at this shop, for a reason. Like this was meant to happen. And so listen to that inner guide, that intuition that you were born with. A lot of times that gets shut off by society, by corporate, by our families, by how we were raised, And I really want you to tap into that, because that's going to help you not only in your personal life, but in your professional life too. Okay. And this can get me on like a whole nother tangent, but anyways, that in a nutshell was my spiritual reading, my psychic reading when I was in Minnesota during the Rachel Hollis conference. And I just loved it. It was very quick. Like I said, I think it was only like 15 or 20 minutes. And then afterwards I went out and I got all the grounding stuff. We did like muscle testing on the crystals that I bought and the oils that I bought and the sage spray that I bought. And everything that I bought had a very strong muscle test. So it's like it passed the test. And it's so interesting because sometimes the things that we think we need aren't really the things that we need. And so I wanted a lot of like abundance and prosperity stones, but really what I needed was grounding stones. And that sounds so boring because they're like grays and they're blacks. And while I love those colors, I really wanted to be like, I want to feel prosperous and abundant and courageous and all of these things. And really, my inner guide was telling me that I needed to chill out and find and center myself and ground myself. So that's exactly what I did. I went and I got some warrior spray, some sage spray, and I got a whole bunch of grounding stones. And it's just really helped me open my eyes and gain clarity the last couple of months, which I just continue to do. Like every time you feel like you're clear and things are going great, it's like the universe knows that you need to be challenged again. And so they throw something else your way. So there's no like magical destination that you're going to get to where you're like, wake up one day and you're like, oh, my life has zero challenges. Because every time you level up, your problems, your challenges, your struggles also level up, and you just take another deeper dive. It's peeling back another layer of the onion to figuring out who you are at your core. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the hippie woo-ness of it. I hope you enjoyed just the whole entire thing. And tune in for another episode. I will go a little bit deeper into the weekend on, what Rachel Hollis looked like and all of those things, that whole event and just that whole weekend. But yes, if you enjoyed this, please take a screenshot, share with a friend, tag me on social media. Over on Instagram at sasha.davis. And if you're looking for additional support, I do have some one-on-one coaching available if that's something that you're interested in. If you're working on life and business stuff, you want to tap into your highest potential, I am your gal. You can fill out your application over at sashadavis.com/apply now, or just by clicking on one of the links that says work with me. Fill out that application and then it will redirect you to a free clarity call with me. And then we'll just see if you're a good fit. If not, one-on-one coaching, maybe one of the other programs that I have would be a good fit for you. So you never know unless you try. And I would love to learn more about you and see what the future holds. So anyways, catch you guys next time. Have a kick-ass day. Thank you for listening to the Confidence Coach podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to leave a 5-star review and share what you loved most about this episode. You can also screenshot and share it on social media. Tag me at sasha.davis. And if you're looking for additional resources, head on over to sashadavis.com. Check out ways that you can work with me and all the free resources that are available to you. Have a kick-ass day.